Captain Susan Miller stood at the viewport of the exploration vessel Frontier, gazing at the stars that stretched endlessly before her. The ship hummed quietly around her, a testament to how far humanity had come in the 2 centuries since they first ventured beyond their solar system. Earth was now just one planet among thousands that humans called home. What had begun as desperate exploration after Earth's resources nearly collapsed had grown into something no one could have predicted. Susan took a deep breath and turned away from the viewport. The command center bustled with activity as her crew prepared for their meeting with the Arcadian delegation. The Arcadians were the 4th alien species humanity had encountered in their expansion across the galaxy. Like the others before them, they were technologically primitive compared to humans. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Arcadians," said First Officer Daniel Grant. His fingers moved quickly across the control panel, bringing up a holographic display. "Put them through," Susan replied, straightening her uniform. The hologram flickered to life, revealing a tall, slender being with pale blue skin and large, almond-shaped eyes. Ambassador Zenith of the Arcadian High Council bowed slightly. "Captain Miller, we are honored by your visit to our system," the ambassador said. "The High Council is eager to discuss the trade agreement your government has proposed." Susan smiled warmly. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We look forward to establishing a mutually beneficial relationship between our peoples." After the transmission ended, Daniel approached Susan with a data tablet. "The Arcadians still have no idea how extensive our network is, do they?" Susan shook her head. "No. Like the others, they think we're just another spacefaring race looking to trade. They don't understand our FTL communication systems or how many worlds we've already connected. By the time they realize how far we've spread, we'll have outposts in every sector of the Orion Arm," Daniel observed. Susan nodded. "That's the point. We're not here to conquer. We're here to connect." The Frontier entered orbit around Arcadia Prime later that day. From space, the planet looked similar to Earth, with vast oceans of deep purple and land masses covered in vegetation that ranged from golden to deep red. Susan led a small delegation to the planet's surface. The Arcadian capital city was built among towering rock formations, its architecture blending seamlessly with the natural landscape. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon, and the gravity was slightly lighter than Earth standard, giving each step a subtle bounce. Ambassador Zenith greeted them at the landing pad, accompanied by several members of the Arcadian High Council. "Welcome to Arcadia Prime," he said, spreading his 4-fingered hands in a traditional gesture of welcome. The diplomatic meetings took place over 3 days. Susan watched as her team skillfully negotiated the terms of the agreement. They offered the Arcadians improved agricultural technology, medical advancements, and defense systems against the space debris that frequently threatened their world. In exchange, the humans would establish a small outpost on Arcadia's second moon and gain access to the rare minerals that made the Arcadian system valuable. What the Arcadians didn't fully grasp was that this outpost would become another node in humanity's vast galactic network. It would contain quantum communication technology that would instantly connect Arcadia to every human settlement across thousands of light years. It would become a trade hub, a cultural exchange center, and eventually, a strategic location that would bring the entire sector under human influence. On the final day of negotiations, Susan sat with Ambassador Zenith on a balcony overlooking the city. The 3 suns of Arcadia were setting, casting long shadows and bathing everything in golden light. "Your people have traveled so far," Zenith said thoughtfully. "Yet you seem so young compared to some of the other species we have encountered." Susan smiled. "We had to adapt quickly. Earth was dying. We needed to find new homes among the stars. And now, you offer us your technology, your protection," Zenith continued. "Some on the council wonder what humanity truly wants in return." "Just partnership," Susan replied simply. "The galaxy is vast and often dangerous. We believe that cooperation benefits everyone." Zenith nodded slowly. "There is wisdom in that. Still, some fear that by accepting your help, we may become dependent on it." Susan turned to face the ambassador directly. Every relationship creates some form of dependency, Ambassador. Even now, your world trades with 3 other species. But with humans, you'll find we offer something different. And what is that? Zenith asked. Choice, Susan said. We'll share our knowledge, offer our protection, establish trade, but we won't force our ways upon you. That has always been humanity's approach. What she didn't say was that the choice was largely an illusion. Once a world connected to the human network, the benefits became too great, the integration too complete to ever truly separate again. It wasn't control through force. It was influence through indispensability. That night, as the Frontier prepared for departure, Susan received a secure transmission from Earth. She entered her private quarters and activated the quantum communicator. The holographic figure of Director Frank Martinez appeared before her. Captain Miller, I've reviewed your reports, Martinez said. The Arcadian agreement is approved. Proceed with establishing the outpost immediately. Yes, Director, Susan replied. The Arcadians have agreed to all our terms. They're eager for the medical technology, especially. Martinez nodded. Excellent. With Arcadia in the network, we'll have access to all the major trading routes in that sector. The Strategic Planning Division estimates that within 15 years, 7 more systems in their region will request similar agreements. Susan wasn't surprised. This was how humanity had expanded their influence across the galaxy, not through war or invasion, but through carefully calculated assistance that created lasting bonds of trade, technology, and eventually, dependency. There's one more thing, Martinez added. We've detected unusual energy signatures from the Veloci system. I want the Frontier to investigate after you've established the Arcadian outpost. The Veloci haven't made contact with any other species yet, Susan noted. Exactly, Martinez replied. We prefer to be the first. It's always easier that way. After the transmission ended, Susan returned to the viewport. Below, the lights of the Arcadian capital glittered like stars against the darkening landscape. Soon those lights would be joined by human technology, human culture, human influence, all welcomed with open arms. By the time the Arcadians or any other species truly understood the extent of humanity's reach across the galaxy, it would be too late. The network would already be established, the dependencies too deep to sever, the benefits too great to reject. Humanity didn't need to rule the galaxy through force. They simply needed to make themselves essential to every corner of it. And they were already well on their way to achieving exactly that. Alan Parker sat at his control station in the massive underground complex of Luna Command. The Earth's moon had been humanity's first outpost beyond their homeworld, and now it housed the nerve center of their galactic operations. Through the thick glass of the viewing window, Earth hung like a blue jewel against the blackness of space. As Chief Communications Officer for the Quantum Entanglement Network, or QN, Alan oversaw the invisible web that connected every human outpost across the galaxy. The network was humanity's greatest advantage. It allowed instant communication across any distance, completely undetectable to less advanced civilizations who still relied on radio waves or light-speed communications. Sir, we have a priority message from Sector 7, said Diane Wells, his assistant. She handed him a data tablet with the encrypted message. Alan scanned the report. The Frontier had successfully established the outpost on Arcadia's moon. Captain Miller was now en route to investigate the Veloci system as ordered. He nodded with satisfaction. Add Arcadia to the network integration schedule, he told Diane. Start with the standard protocol. Medical technology first, then agricultural assistance, followed by the cultural exchange program. Diane made a note on her tablet. That's the 4th new system this month. The expansion rate is increasing. As planned, Alan replied. He turned to the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the command room. It showed the galaxy with thousands of glowing blue dots representing human outposts and installations. Yellow lines connected them, showing the quantum communications network that only humans could access. We've also received a formal application for membership from the Proxian government, Diane added. Alan raised his eyebrows in surprise. The Proxians were a proud, stubborn species who had initially rejected human offers of assistance. They finally decided they want in. What changed their minds? 3 decades of watching their neighboring systems flourish under human guidance, Diane said with a small smile. Their official request cites economic necessity and security concerns, but essentially, they don't want to be left behind. This was how it always happened. Humanity never forced their presence on any civilization. They simply established themselves nearby, offered their advanced technology and protection to those who wanted it, and waited. Sooner or later, even the most resistant species would see the benefits and request to join the network. Schedule a diplomatic team, Alan instructed. The usual approach: respectful, not overeager. Make them feel like they're gaining access to an exclusive alliance, not submitting to our influence. Alan turned back to the galactic map. Each blue dot represented not just a human presence but a point of influence, a strand in the web that humanity had been quietly weaving for 2 centuries. Most species only saw their local connections, the trade they conducted with nearby human outposts, the cultural exchanges, the protection human ships provided against pirates or asteroids. None of them saw the complete picture. None of them understood that these isolated points were part of a vast interconnected system, all controlled from installations like Luna Command. By my count, that's the 9th independent system to request membership this month, Diane noted, reviewing the statistics. Alan nodded, studying the expanded view of Sector 7, where the Arcadian system was now highlighted. And none of them understand they're simply joining what already exists. Later that day, Alan attended the weekly strategic meeting in the secure conference room deep within Luna Command. Present were the regional directors of the Quen from all 12 sectors of human space. The network expansion in the Orion Arm is proceeding ahead of schedule, reported Maya Johnson, director of Sector 3. With the addition of the Arcadian system and the pending Proxian integration, we'll have effective coverage of 78% of that region. What about the Veloci? Asked Greg Nelson, the oldest of the directors. Have we made contact yet? Alan brought up the latest report from Captain Miller. The Frontier is approaching their system now. Initial scans show they've achieved basic space travel but haven't ventured beyond their own moons. They appear to be developing along the standard technological curve. Perfect timing then, said Greg. They're advanced enough to appreciate what we offer, but not so advanced that they could pose any challenge to our systems. This was the sweet spot for first contact. A civilization that had begun to reach for the stars but hadn't yet developed the technology to truly grasp how vast the galaxy was, or how extensively humanity had spread throughout it. What about the Xanabians? Asked Director Chen of Sector 9. Their scientists have been asking some pointed questions lately. The Xanabians were among the oldest spacefaring races humans had encountered. They had been exploring the stars for nearly 1,000 years before humanity left Earth, but their technological development had plateaued centuries ago. We have the situation under control, Alan replied. Professor Kyle Evans has been working at their science academy for 15 years now. He's been carefully guiding their research in directions that benefit our goals. Still, they're more perceptive than most, Chen insisted. If any species is going to notice the pattern of our expansion, it's them. Alan nodded. That's why we've integrated so thoroughly with their academic institutions. We keep their best minds focused on theoretical research rather than practical galactic politics. The meeting continued with each director reporting on the status of their sector. Throughout it all, Alan found himself repeatedly glancing at the galactic map. The blue network of human influence had grown exponentially in just the past decade. When humanity first ventured beyond their solar system, they had been desperate refugees from a dying Earth. Now, they were the invisible architects of a new, galactic order, one built not on military conquest but on technological superiority, strategic positioning, and carefully cultivated relationships. As the meeting ended, Maya Johnson lingered behind with Alan. You know, she said quietly, sometimes I wonder what would happen if they all realized at once, every species, every world, just how completely their societies have become dependent on human technology, human trade routes, human protection. Alan considered this for a moment. By the time they realize what's happened, it will have been the status quo for generations. They won't fight it because they won't be able to imagine the galaxy functioning any other way. Maya nodded. Not an empire built on fear but on necessity. Exactly, Alan replied. The most effective form of control is the kind that no one recognizes as control at all. 7 people entered the secure chamber deep beneath the surface of Mars. They moved with purpose, each carrying data tablets and grave expressions. The room was perfectly circular, with a round table at its center. No recording devices were permitted here. No assistants attended. This was the Council of 7, the true power behind humanity's silent rule of the galaxy. Madeline Scott, Director of Galactic Intelligence, took her seat first. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly, and her eyes missed nothing. Next came Frank Martinez, Director of Expansion, a tall man with dark skin and a closely trimmed beard. Admiral Richard Cole of the Human Defense Fleet sat down with military precision, his uniform immaculate despite the long journey from his flagship. Catherine Brooks, Director of Technological Development, entered next. She was younger than the others, a genius who had revolutionized quantum theory. Harold Jones, the Economic Director, moved slowly to his seat, the oldest member of the council at 93. His mind remained as sharp as ever. Julia King, Director of Cultural Affairs, followed, her tablet filled with reports on the integration of human arts, language, and customs across alien worlds. Last to enter was President Laura Wilson of the United Human Systems. Though her title suggested political authority, in truth, all 7 members held equal power in this room. The public face of humanity's government bore little resemblance to its actual structure. Let's begin, President, Wilson said once they were all seated. Madeline, your intelligence report? Madeline Scott activated the holographic display at the center of the table. The Veloci have detected some of our deep space monitoring stations, she reported. Their scientists are becoming suspicious of the number of satellites and probes they've found at the edges of their system. Captain Miller is making first contact with them now, Frank Martinez noted. Should we pull back some of our observation equipment? Madeline shook her head. It's too late for that, but I don't believe it's a serious problem yet. Does it matter? If they're suspicious, Frank asked, leaning forward. They're surrounded by 17 human-allied systems. Even if they understand what we're doing, they can't stop it. Admiral Cole cleared his throat. We should remember our public position. We've never claimed to be building an empire. We maintain that we're establishing a cooperative network for mutual benefit. Which is true, Catherine Brooks pointed out. The fact that we control the technology, the communication networks, the trade routes, and the defense fleets is simply an administrative detail. Harold Jones smiled. His wrinkled face showed the wisdom of decades guiding humanity's economic expansion. This was always the plan. Not conquest, but integration. Not empire, but influence. By the time they realize humanity rules the galaxy, we'll have been ruling it for centuries. And they'll be better for it, added Julia King. Every species we've brought into the network has seen improvements in health, prosperity, and quality of life. President Wilson nodded. That's what separates us from the empires of Earth's history. We don't exploit. We elevate. The species we connect with truly do benefit. She paused. But we cannot allow premature discovery of the true extent of our influence. What's the status of the Zanabian situation? Catherine Brooks brought up new data on the holographic display. Professor Kyle Evans reports that one of the Zanabian scientists has been mapping trade routes across their sector. He's beginning to notice patterns, specifically how all major routes eventually connect to human systems. Can Evans redirect his attention? Asked Frank. He's trying, Catherine replied. But this particular Zanabian is persistent. We may need to consider bringing him into our confidence. President Wilson looked surprised. You mean reveal the truth? We've never done that with a non-human. It might be time, Harold Jones said thoughtfully. The network is stable enough now. Perhaps we need to begin the next phase. selective revelation to key individuals from other species. The room fell silent as they considered this radical departure from 2 centuries of protocol. If we do this, Admiral Cole said finally, we need absolute certainty that this Xanabian can be trusted. And we need a containment plan if he reacts badly. Julia King tapped her tablet. I've studied Xanabian psychology extensively. They value truth and knowledge above all else. If we present our network as the greatest knowledge-sharing system in galactic history, which it is, he might become an ally rather than a threat. President Wilson looked around the table. We need to vote on this. Are we ready to begin selective revelation of humanity's true position in the galaxy? One by one, they cast their votes. The result was 5-2 in favor, with Admiral Cole and Madeline Scott opposing. Very well, President Wilson said. Catherine, instruct Professor Evans to prepare the Xanabian for limited disclosure. Frank, accelerate the integration timetable for the Veloci. We need them in the network before they connect too many dots on their own. Harold Jones raised a hand. There's another matter we should discuss. The growth of our network has reached a critical point. According to my projections, within 50 years we will have effective control of every major species, trade route, and resource in the galaxy. That was always the goal, Frank said. Yes, Harold agreed. But we never fully addressed what comes after. Once we've achieved complete integration, what then? Do we maintain the illusion of independence? Or do we begin to transition to a more open form of governance? The question hung in the air. For 2 centuries, humanity had worked toward this goal, the quiet beneficial dominance of the galaxy, but few had considered what would happen once that goal was achieved. Perhaps, Julia suggested, the final phase should be a genuine federation, not one ruled by humans, but one where all species truly share governance. After we've shaped every aspect of their development? Madeline asked skeptically. After we've built the entire structure of galactic civilization to human specifications? It would be the most ethical outcome, Catherine said. We started this because Earth was dying and we needed to survive. We continued because we believed our approach brought stability and progress. But eventually we should evolve beyond control. Admiral Cole nodded slowly. My fleet ensures peace throughout human space, but I've always believed our ultimate goal should be a galaxy that doesn't need our oversight. President Wilson looked at each council member in turn. This is a discussion for another day, but an important one. For now, we continue as planned. Gradual beneficial integration, the silent spread of human influence, and absolute secrecy about the true nature of our galactic position. As the meeting concluded, the 7 most powerful humans in the galaxy gathered their tablets and prepared to return to their respective posts. Each carried the weight of species-wide decisions on their shoulders. Each understood that their actions were shaping the future of not just humanity, but of all intelligent life in the galaxy, and none of them suspected that the revelation they had just authorized would accelerate events beyond their careful control. Professor Kyle Evans stood at the window of his office at the Xanabian Science Academy. Outside, the 3 moons of Xanab cast pale light over the sprawling campus. Kyle had lived among the Xanabians for nearly 20 years now. As one of the oldest spacefaring races in the galaxy, the Xanabians prided themselves on their knowledge and scientific achievements. They had welcomed Kyle as a student of their advanced theories, never suspecting that humans had long ago surpassed their understanding of the universe. Kyle's real mission was to guide Xanabian research in directions that benefited humanity, while ensuring they never developed technologies that might threaten the human network. It was a delicate balance, allowing them to advance but never too quickly or in the wrong areas. The door chime sounded, and Kyle turned from the window. Enter, he called. Trelnak, his gray-skinned Xanabian colleague, stepped into the office. Trelnak was tall and slender like all his kind, with large, multifaceted eyes that could see into spectrums humans could only detect with instruments. Professor Evans, Trelnak said, his voice carrying the musical tone typical of his species. I've completed the analysis you suggested, but I've found something strange. He placed a data crystal on Kyle's desk. Kyle kept his expression neutral. What kind of strangeness? I was mapping trade routes across our sector for the past decade as you suggested, Trelnak explained. But when I expanded the parameters to include cultural exchanges, diplomatic missions, and scientific collaborations, a pattern emerged. Kyle felt a small knot form in his stomach. This was exactly what Catherine Brooks had warned him about. During their last quantum communication, Trelnak was seeing the pattern. What pattern? Kyle asked, though he already knew. Trelnak activated the holographic display on Kyle's desk. A three-dimensional map of their galactic sector appeared with thousands of lines connecting various worlds. Every major trade route, every diplomatic channel, every cultural exchange, they all lead back to human systems, Trelnak said, his large eyes blinking rapidly. Not directly, but through a series of connections. It's as if humans are at the center of everything. Kyle maintained a calm expression. This was happening faster than expected. The Council had only just authorized limited disclosure, and he hadn't yet received specific instructions on how to proceed. That's an interesting theory, Kyle replied carefully. But humans are newcomers to galactic society. We've only been spacefaring for a few centuries. That's what made me curious, Trelnak continued, manipulating the hologram to show historical data. I checked the records. 200 years ago, humans had contact with 3 species. 100 years ago, 12. Now there isn't a single spacefaring civilization that doesn't have humans among them, advising their governments, working in their research institutions, facilitating their trade. Kyle stood up slowly and walked to a cabinet on the far wall. His instructions had been clear. If a Xanabian discovered the pattern, he was to assess whether they were a potential ally. If not, he had means to ensure their silence. But Kyle had grown fond of Trelnak over the years. He hoped it wouldn't come to that. Perhaps we're just adaptable, Kyle suggested mildly. Trelnak's gaze was unnervingly direct. Or perhaps by the time we realized what was happening, humanity had already quietly taken control of the galaxy. There it was. The moment of revelation. Kyle reached into the cabinet and removed a small quantum communicator, a device no Xanabian had ever seen before. What is that? Trelnak asked, the first hint of alarm in his voice. A way to talk to my superiors, Kyle said simply. You've discovered something important, Trelnak. Something only a few non-humans know. Kyle activated the device. Instantly, a small hologram appeared above it. Catherine Brooks, billions of light years away on Mars, yet speaking to him with no delay. Professor Evans, she said, our monitors detected your emergency signal. Is this the Xanabian? Yes, Kyle confirmed. Trelnak has mapped the network. He sees the pattern. Catherine nodded. The Council has already voted. Limited disclosure is authorized. Trelnak looked between Kyle and the hologram, his gray skin paling further. What is this? How is this communication possible across such distances? Our fastest signals take years to reach the nearest systems. Kyle gestured for Trelnak to sit. What I'm about to tell you will change how you understand the galaxy, Trelnak. Humanity has been keeping certain technologies secret, not just from Xanabians, but from all species. Over the next hour, Kyle explained the basics of the human network, how quantum entanglement allowed instant communication across any distance, how humanity had been strategically positioning themselves at key points throughout the galaxy for centuries, how they subtly guided the development of other species, always for mutual benefit but always maintaining their technological edge. Trelnak listened in stunned silence. When Kyle finished, the Xanabian sat motionless for several minutes. All this time, Trelnak finally said. We thought we were one of the elder races teaching humans our ways, but you were guiding us. Guiding, yes, Kyle agreed. Not controlling. Every advancement your people have made has been your own achievement. We simply suggested directions. Why tell me this now? Trelnak asked. Catherine answered from the hologram. Because we're entering a new phase. For centuries, humanity has built this network in secret. But as you've proven, the pattern is becoming visible. We need allies from other species who understand the full picture and can help us move toward a more open form of cooperation. Or you need to know which of us need to be silenced, Trelnak said, his keen mind quickly grasping the implications. Kyle winced at the bluntness, but didn't deny it. We prefer the first option. Trelnak stood and walked to the window looking out at the moons. You know, our histories tell of an ancient race that once ruled the stars, long before Xanabians achieved spaceflight. They vanished millennia ago, but they left behind a philosophy. True power is invisible until its absence would cause collapse. Kyle exchanged a glance with Catherine's hologram. That's remarkably similar to our approach. Perhaps you are not the first to discover this method of influence, Trelnak suggested. He turned back to face them. If I help you, what happens next? You would join a small group of non-humans who know the truth, Catherine explained. You would help us identify others among your people who could handle this knowledge, and eventually you would help us transition from hidden influence to open cooperation. And if I refuse? Kyle sighed. We have ways to ensure you wouldn't share what you've learned. They're not pleasant, but they don't involve harm. We could selectively remove these memories while leaving the rest of your mind intact. Trelnak's multifaceted eyes seemed to evaluate both of them. I need time to consider. Of course, Kyle said, though he knew that security protocols were already in place. If Trelnak showed any sign of revealing what he'd learned before agreeing to cooperate, intervention would be swift. As Trelnak left the office, Kyle turned to Catherine's hologram. He's brilliant. He mapped the entire network from limited data. Which is why we need him, Catherine replied. The Council believes it's time to begin bringing the brightest minds from other species into our confidence. The galaxy is changing, Kyle. Our hidden rule may not remain hidden much longer. Kyle nodded, looking out at the alien moons. By the time they all realize, we'll have been ruling for centuries. But what happens when they do realize? That's the question we've never fully answered. Catherine's hologram flickered slightly. We're about to find out. The Great Hall of the Galactic Consortium had never been so full. Representatives from 27 different species had gathered on the neutral world of Nexus. The emergency session was unprecedented in both its size and the tension that filled the air. News had spread quickly after the Xanabian revelation. Humans had quietly established control over nearly the entire galaxy and had been maintaining this control for generations. Admiral Betty Nelson of the United Human Systems stood calmly at the center of the chamber. Her gray uniform was crisp, her posture straight. She showed no fear despite being surrounded by representatives who had just discovered they had been unknowingly under human influence for centuries. Behind her stood a small team of human representatives, including Ambassador William Clark, a tall man with kind eyes and silver hair. For centuries we have operated under the pretense of being equal partners, said the Veloci delegate, his tentacles writhing in agitation. The Veloci were one of the newest species to join the galactic community, and they felt the betrayal most keenly. Now we discover that humans control 83% of all interstellar trade routes, have military bases in every sector, and have advisors in every government. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered delegates. The Arcadians, the Proxians, the Xanabians all had learned the truth in the past month after Trelnak had shared his discovery, despite agreeing to limited disclosure. The revelation had spread faster than the Human Council could contain it. Ambassador Clark stepped forward. We've never hidden our presence or our activities, he said, his voice calm and reasonable. Everything we've done has been with full disclosure and consent. But not with full understanding, the Proxian representative shouted, rising from her seat. Her people had been among the most resistant to human influence, until economic necessity had forced them to join the network. You never revealed the extent of your network, the reach of your influence. Admiral Nelson raised her hand for silence. The room quieted, a testament to the respect or fear her position still commanded. What exactly would you have done differently? Had you known? She asked, her gaze sweeping the chamber. Would you have rejected our medical technology that has doubled your lifespans? Would you have refused the agricultural innovations that ended starvation on your worlds? Would you have declined the defense pacts that have prevented interstellar wars for 2 centuries? The chamber fell silent as her words sank in. Humanity never conquered the galaxy, Nelson continued. We simply connected it. We never ruled through force, but through mutual benefit. And yes, by the time you realized the full extent of our influence, we had already been maintaining galactic peace and prosperity for generations. Trelnak, now representing the Xanabian response to the revelation, stood slowly. His large eyes reflected the light as he addressed not the humans but his fellow non-human delegates. I was the first to discover the pattern, he said. I was angry too, I felt manipulated. But then I asked myself, what has human influence actually done to our civilization? He paused. Before humans arrived, Xanabians had suffered 3 civil wars in a century. We had exhausted the resources of 2 of our colony worlds. Our population was in decline. Another pause. Since humans began their guidance, as they call it, we have known 200 years of peace. Our population has tripled. Our standard of living has improved beyond anything our ancestors could have imagined. Ambassador Clark stepped forward again. The question now isn't how we got here, but where we go next. For the first time, you understand the true nature of galactic politics. So I ask you, do you want to dismantle what we've built together, or do you want to join us as fully informed partners in maintaining it? The Arcadian delegate, Ambassador Zenith, leaned forward. If we choose partnership, what would change? Would humans surrender their technological advantages, their control of the quantum network? Not immediately, Admiral Nelson answered honestly. Such a transition would need to happen gradually, to prevent chaos. But yes, the Council has already voted to begin a process of true integration, shared technology, shared governance, shared responsibility. The Veloci delegates' tentacles rippled with skepticism. Why should we believe you now? You've hidden the truth for centuries. Because keeping the truth hidden is no longer possible, Ambassador Clark replied simply, nor is it desirable. The galaxy is changing. New challenges are emerging that will require all our combined wisdom and strength. As the debate continued, representatives from each species huddled together, discussing their options in hushed tones. Many were angry, some felt betrayed, but all understood a simple truth. The galaxy under human influence was more peaceful, more prosperous, and more stable than it had ever been before. The Xanabian delegate rose first. We choose partnership, but real partnership this time with full disclosure. One by one, other delegates stood to indicate their agreement. Not all. The Veloci and 3 other species remained seated, their postures showing their continued resistance. But it was a start. As the session ended, Admiral Nelson and Ambassador Clark walked together toward their ship. Do you think it will work? Clark asked quietly. True partnership after centuries of hidden control? Nelson nodded slowly. It has to. The Council was right. We're entering a new phase. The revelation was always inevitable. Better to embrace it and guide the transition than to fight the unavoidable. On the observation deck of their ship, they watched as Nexus fell away beneath them, the gathered delegates returning to their respective worlds with news that would forever change how their species viewed their place in the galaxy. There's something neither of us mentioned in there, Clark said after a while. The anomalies beyond the galactic rim, Nelson replied, knowing exactly what he meant. The real reason the Council voted for disclosure. Clark nodded. If those readings are correct, we may be facing something none of our species have encountered before, something that will require a truly united galaxy to confront. Nelson turned from the viewport to face her colleague. Humanity guided the galaxy's development because Earth was dying and we needed to ensure our survival. We maintained control because we believed it brought peace and prosperity to all species. And now? Clark asked. Now we need to trust that what we built will hold, even as we loosen our grip on it. She looked back at the stars. By the time they realized humanity ruled the galaxy, our rule was already becoming something else entirely. In systems across The galaxy, the news spread. Humans had been secretly guiding galactic civilization for centuries. The revelation sparked outrage, wonder, fear, and for many, a strange sense of relief. The invisible hand that had maintained order for so long now had a name, a face, a purpose that could be understood. As for humanity, they prepared for a new chapter in their history, one where their influence would be acknowledged openly, challenged, regularly, and ultimately transformed into something they could not fully control. And beyond the edge of the galaxy, something watched and waited, unaware that its distant presence had already changed the course of galactic politics forever.